present to you the biggest thorn in the establishment side, Ron Paul.
The revolution is alive and well in Montana. I've only been here a short while, but I've talked to a few people in the media and they've asked me several times the same question. What is it about Montana, the people of Montana, that likes what you've been saying? I said, well, maybe they love liberty in Montana. The opposite of liberty is big government. So if we want more liberty, we have to shrink the size of our government. Not just by a little, but by a lot. People worry about, this radical idea. To me, it doesn't sound radical. It sounds like a very modest thing to do. And that is, getting rid of the income tax. That's just a modest thing. Get rid of the income tax, they worry about, well, how are we going to finance government? Where are we going to get the money? I say, well, why don't we just shrink the size of government to the point where we don't need an income tax? But they still can't quite understand it. They haven't read their history books, and they didn't realize that we've only had the income tax since 1913. So I think we could live without it. Matter of fact, the government, our federal government, is still getting as much money. They would still get as much money today without an income tax as they had 10 years ago. Wasn't the size of the government plenty big enough 10 years ago? So it would not be a problem. So the real issue is that we have to decide, and you as young people have to decide, and that is, what should the role of government be? Should the role of government be there to run our lives and police the world and run the economy? And I would say, no way. It's time that we don't pretend that we're the policemen of the world, which means that then that gives us a good chance to save a lot of money. Right now we're in 130 countries. I would like to say we ought to be in one country defending this country and defending our world. We have over 700 bases overseas, always there to protect us. But we're going broke, and it's a good time, rather than waiting for the collapse of the empire. And unfortunately, that's what usually happens with governments that spread themselves too thinly around the world. They usually go broke. And just think, just recently, the Soviet system collapsed. Not because we had to have a nuclear exchange with the Soviets. They collapsed for economic reasons. And that's what's going to happen to us if we don't change our tune. We have to get our house in order. And by doing so, think of the benefits. We get our house in order, cut back the size of government, we have less taxes and more freedom. Why don't we do it? I would say it's time for a change in that direction. Every once in a while you hear other candidates talking about change, but when they do, you'll have to ask he or she, whichever it is, well, does that mean you're going to bring the troops home? Does that mean you will only fight wars that are declared by the Constitution and the Congress? Or will you not interfere in the economic lives of our people and the individual rights of the people? And will you have sound money again? That's what real change is. Real change, unfortunately, is just going back to what we were supposed to have done in the first place. That is, follow the Constitution. A question frequently about why it is that so many people have gotten interested in the campaign. why we were able to raise so much money, and especially why young people have joined. And there's a couple reasons. It's been a while since somebody has really just had a chance to talk across the country and really defend what America's all about, defending liberty and defending the Constitution. So it's sort of nice to hear that once again. But I think there's something else going on. I think it's the failure of government that is self-evident. You know, when we're a rich country, and we have been rich, we're still wealthy in the sense that we still live pretty well, but the tragedy there is that we're all living on borrowed money. The government has borrowed everything. Our country owes $3 trillion to overseas right now, so we can't even fight the war or keep the welfare state going without borrowing close to $3 billion a day. So if we're very wealthy, and we certainly were very wealthy, and then we could borrow, and then we could print, and we got away with this for so long that nobody worried too much about it. But I think the handwriting is on the wall. The American people know about it. There was a statistic that came out today that 90% of the American people said there's something seriously wrong with the economy. Yeah, in Washington, D.C., they haven't even heard about that yet. But it's very evident to the American people that we cannot continue it. They don't want us to continue fighting these no-win wars all around the world, bankrupting our country, just draining our resources, making our national defense much weaker. We're weaker for all this. If we want a strong national defense, we won't be just draining our troops and ruining and undermining all our weaponry. I mean, we're just not in good shape right now. And besides, we have more enemies than ever before. Foreign policy really gives us the vehicle if we want a transition. If we don't work for a transition to gradually shrink the size of government and getting back to work again, it'll end badly, like all other times, with runaway inflation, destruction of the money, which causes political and economic turmoil. That's what we're looking at if we don't do something. But right now, our foreign policy costs us $1 trillion a year to operate all this overseas. And it's endless. Stiglitz, the Nobel Prize winning economist, has predicted that he started off by saying the Iraqi war would cost between $1 and $3 trillion. He's now saying between $3 and $5 trillion because he adds up all the economic costs. This old economic myth that says that, you know, in times of war, you have prosperity, which is complete nonsense. The Depression wasn't ended, you know, with the World War II. The Depression ended after World War II ended. So this idea that you have a war economy, you spend $100 billion or $500 billion for weaponry, you send the weapons over and you bomb somebody. And then you have to pay to rebuild what you bombed, and it drains. That's why we're poor. That's why we can't afford our education benefits. We can't afford our medical care. We don't have our good jobs because we are wasting so much money overseas. Now, what we can do, if we decide, rightfully so and as soon as possible, we should start in the most important things to do, and that is to end this war. Yeah. This war... It was said that we went to war because Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, that he had something to do with 9/11, and that we were obligated to teach them about democracy. I would say we ought to teach a few people in this country about democracy. The reason we have to end it is because the more we spend on bombing countries like Iraq, then we pay for that. And then they come back, the government comes back to us, taxes us again, so that we go over and rebuild Iraq. At the same time, we're building bridges in Iraq. Our own bridges are falling down. I say take care of our bridges and our infrastructure here in this country.